سنوات لضمان اتساق المساندة التي تقدمها مجموعة البنك الدولي مع الأهداف الإنمائية للبلد المستفيد. يأتي إطلاق إطار
The launch is coming in a critical timing. The whole world is recovering from the repercussion of many crises. We will be listening from the speech of Minister Rania Al-Mashat. The strategic partnership is aiming to set the environment for green development, including all sectors. The Egyptian citizen is in the core of the strategy in order to reach three more main goals: increase the employment in private sector, the increase of the ability of support and sustaining strength in face of crises. Minister Rania Al-Mashat will deliver her speech. By the name of God Almighty, Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, the attendees, ministers and member of the government and representative of the national entities, Mr. Farid Belhag, the Deputy Head of the World Bank for the Middle East Affairs, ministers and all attendees. At the beginning, I would like to welcome you in this meeting with the participation of Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli and Mr. Farid Belhag, the Deputy Head of the World Bank for Middle East Affairs, for the launch of the development strategy for World Bank Group and Egypt for the period 2023-2027. Egypt is having close historical ties with Egypt and the World Bank Group. Egypt is one of the states who initiated and launched the bank in 1945. Through the years, we developed the ties between Egypt and the World Bank Group and succeeded this relation, as the World Bank Group is one of the main partners for Egypt. Besides its participation and support for Egypt in many sectors, the World Bank participated in many projects in Egypt with a total investment of $25 billion. Also, many expertise in Egypt worked in the bank and its affiliated organization, and they work in the construction of this bank, like the intellectual Egyptian and economist Dr. Ibrahim Shahata, may God rest his soul, who was the deputy first head of the World Bank from 83 to 98. Also, he participated in many institutions, and the World Bank named one of its whole according to his name. We are continuing to develop many causes. We are having a roadmap for the future to develop the World Bank Group to cope with the new changes and the crises in the world economy and environmental in light of the challenges like the climate change as well, and to cope with the low-budget states and developing countries for making solutions, more vital and proper solutions. Mr. Ajay Banga is appointed as the head of the World Bank Group, and I hail his participation and this position for Mr. Agia. We are launching today a very important developmental project with the national priorities, with the Sustainable Development Strategy 2030 and the program of strategic climate change and development of Egyptian family, and the strategy for empowering women, and many sectoral strategies to develop the sustainable and whole development, to sustain our support in front of the challenges and the crises, to create a better environment for the citizens, the refugees, and to cope with the changes in light of the repercussion of the COVID and the Ukrainian war. This partnership agreement is putting the Egyptian citizen in the core interests. First, increase the employment opportunities in the private sector to enable the sector which is reflected positively on providing sustainable opportunities and more challenging opportunity for the fourth industrial civilization, improving the condition of the citizens and the workers, without any, like the housing, the health, the education. It would be fair. And finally, we have to face the crises by enabling the condition for facing the climate change. The partnership contains the enabling of women and children and the governance, and this partnership would enable us to make more partnership in different sectors. The Minister of International Relations is working with different help of different institutions and civil societies and academics and people of expertise to have a real framework to work with the World Bank. And the mutual partnership, we are taking into consideration the results and recommendation of evaluation for the programs and projects in light of the partnership, global partnership in effective global cooperation, the ownership of the state, insisting and precisely transparency. Egypt and the World Bank Group are having 14 projects: health, education, social solidarity, sewage, environment, with a total investment of $7 billion in addition to 23 other projects. Like the developmental project which we are already doing, which has direct effects on citizens, like the direct gas to natural gas to the houses. More than 15 units were having these direct connection, and developing the sewage in the rural areas and the railway, in addition to support of sustainable development in Egypt, in northern Egypt, in southern Egypt rather, and the whole of the health sector, and the fight of COVID-19 and other important projects. In other sides, the private sector is having a priority with the World Bank Group according to the national priorities, enabling the private sector and develop the private sector in order to reach the economic sustainable development. In light of the support of the President to have a full evaluation for the governmental procedure in light of the international standards, the pocket IFC, the hand of the private sector,
في العديد من القطاعات ذات الأولوية
is having
أمثلة لها اليوم مثل الطاقة المتجددة
like renewable
والإنشاءات
energy,
والقطاع المالي والصناعة
construction,
والتعليم والصحة. ومن
health,
أبرز التمويلات التي أتاحتها مؤسسة
education.
التمويل الدولية مؤخرا هي تمويل السندات
The
الخضراء للبنك التجاري
investment
الدولي
of
ومشروع محطة
the green
بنبان للطاقة
bonds
الشمسية،
and Bimban
كما تقدم المؤسسة
power
خدمات استشارية ودعم
plant,
فني للقطاع
solar power
الخاص.
plant.
وبلغت محفظة ضمانات الوكالة الدولية لضمان الاستثمار ميجا
ميجا
للقطاع الخاص أكثر من 500 مليون
is
دولار.
having
سنتعرف أيضا على بعض أنشطة اليوم
$500 million
ومن بينها
among its activities, the static company to have renewable energy projects. As the Ministry of International Cooperation is keen to have a community which is based on education, and the World Bank Group is having many analytical reports about the investment in the development of humanitarian sides. It is analyzing the demographic changes in Egypt in the past few years and its repercussion on the social level, and the repercussion on the economic situation in the country, as well as the developmental projects as well. As Egypt is heading the COP27, which was held in November in Sharm el-Sheikh, we launched a program on climate CCDR, which was launched in the presence of Prime Minister Madbouli, which is having a program and many procedures for investment, which should be applied within 5 years, which would use many human and natural resources and increase the Egyptian capabilities to compete in the international markets. The World Bank Group, with other cooperation of other partnerships like Sharm el-Sheikh program, we are having more program for investment in the climate, as well as partnership for the platform for Nuafi, for the first platform adopted by an Egyptian government to reach the strategic goals. This initiative, this presidential initiative, is having support and mixed support and investment. The World Bank is participating directly in many projects for that platform, an early alarm for the climate change and its impact on the agriculture and the production of crops in Wadi Nil. We are hoping to show you today the strategy and the partnership between Egypt and the World Bank Group for the priorities of the national projects with the economic development, which started in 2016, and the strategic changes by the government, which enabled the institution to participate in supporting the private sector as well and reach the sustainable development. The Ministry of International Cooperation is keen to set strategies between Egypt and the partnerships, the international partners, to reach a transparent strategy reflecting the responsibility, the mutual responsibility. And finally, I would assure that the value of international cooperation is reflected on the effort exerted to build the human being and development on earth and reach sustainable development. As the Egyptian poet said, as it came from the core of our hearts, if we are open and we are up for work, we would reach our aim finally.
شكرا معالي الدكتورة
Thank you,
رانيا.
Dr. Rania Al-Mashad, Minister of
الآن هدعو
International
السيد
Cooperation.
فريد بالحاج، نائب رئيس
Mr.
البنك
Farid
الدولي
bin
لشؤون
Hash,
منطقة
the
الشرق
Deputy
الأوسط
Head
وشمال
of the World
أفريقيا
Bank for
لإلقاء
Middle East
كلمته.
and North
فريد
Africa,
فلتتفضل.
come to deliver your speech, sir.
شكرا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
By the name of God the Almighty,
سيد رئيس الوزراء،
Mr. Prime Minister,
السعادة،
the dear attendees, our colleagues.
في الحقيقة كل ما كنت سأقوله
Honestly,
قيل.
all what I was planning to say was said.
في وضع يعني دقيق.
So I'm in a
على كل
critical
حال سأعرج
condition.
على
So
بعض النقاط.
we will just mention few points. First, this partnership frame between the World Bank and Egypt is a very important framework in a very critical timing regarding the economic situation worldwide. It is a sign, a very important sign from the World Bank, the group of the World Bank, that the trust exists in Egypt. We trust Egypt. And the situation, the economic situation in Egypt is strong. We trust, the World Bank trusts Egypt, which means it's not strange. The relation between the World Bank and Egypt is rooted since the history of the World Bank and the Egyptian history. And we know this. This partnership agreement is having many sides. The first corner is the better luck for the private sector, which cope with the Egyptian government. It is having a priority with the private sector. The World Bank is supporting this. The second corner is the green development and the renewable energy. Egypt is having a very important leading role. And we are moving with Egypt in this direction. Nonetheless, Egypt in COP27 had many speeches and statements coping with this, with the international group. In particular, we recognize this Egyptian role, and today Egypt is heading COP27 for this round and has a very important role. And Egypt is a leading country in the green economy. The third is the Egyptian, the female role, women role. And Egypt is moving in that direction. And we support this. And we are capable to support Egypt. We are ready. We are seeing clearly that the Egyptian economy is in need for the women's role, the successful women's role, for women in the work market, labor market. It is a very important challenge, and we are working on it. And the final point or corner, I would like to thank Dr. Rania Al-Mashad, Minister of International Cooperation, for her role in communicating between the World Bank Group and the Egyptian government through the Minister of International Cooperation, and the role played by Dr. Al-Mashad in that. Also, a private issue. She mentioned Dr. Ibrahim Shahata, He was an honor for all Egyptians in the world, all the Arabs in the World Bank. His memory will always remain in the World Bank. We worked and we insisted that a conference room is named after his name, according to the name of Dr. Ibrahim Shahada. Thank you so much.
شكرا سيد فريد.
Thank you, Mr. Farid, for the speech. As you know, the World Bank Group consists of the World Bank for BRBRD, the
والوكالة الدولية لضمان الاستثمار ميجا
and Investment
سوف
Organization
نشاهد
MEGA. We are going to watch a short video which gives an idea about the International Bank for Construction and Development. It would be followed by the speech by Ms. Marina Was, the director in the World Bank responsible for Egypt. She will show us the main headlines for the strategic partnership for the World Bank Group in Egypt.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister.
مساء الخير عليكم جميعا أصحاب السعادة، الوزراء وأعضاء القطاع الخاص والمجتمع المدني وشركاء التنمية، الضيوف الكرام والأصدقاء. لقد قيل الكثير وسوف أوجز في حديثي. أود أن أتوجه بالشكر لحكومة مصر على كل العمل التي قامت به لإعداد لانطلاق هذا الإطار، إطار الشراكة القطرية لمصر. على المستوى الفني لقد كانت رحلة رائعة وهامة قادتها وزارة
appreciation to the Minister for her commitment and the leadership, not only in the CPF, but more broadly for her partnership and drive. Thank you, Your Excellency. The new CPF is the product of strong country ownership in Egypt, and it's anchored in the government's vision documents. Some of them were already mentioned: Vision 2030, the National Climate Change Strategy, and Egypt's Sustainable Development Strategy. In preparation for this CPF, consultations were conducted with development partners, the private sector, and civil society, and it's great to see some of you in the room today. Thank you for being here. I want to emphasize again that this CPF will be implemented jointly by the World Bank, IFC, and MIGA, and my colleague Sheikh Omar, the IFC Regional Director, will speak after me. The CPF outlines that Egypt is at a point of inflection on its growth journey. It has begun to build the foundation for a growth model that tackles the intersection of climate and development challenges. There are some good recent examples, such as the state ownership policy, which focuses on empowering private sector-led growth. As the president of COP27, Egypt has also begun to tackle the compounded risks on energy, water, and food, for instance, by launching the country platform for the Nexus of Water, Food, and Energy program, the NWAFI program. However, recent external shocks, including Russia's invasion of Ukraine, have exposed macroeconomic vulnerabilities and have accentuated underlying structural challenges. And around the world, we are at a difficult juncture now, and I want to emphasize that core to our strategy going forward is flexibility, and we will adjust as needs adjust. At this juncture, Egypt now has an opportunity to boost long-term sustainable, resilient, and inclusive growth, and to unlock its full potential in line with the needs and the desires of its citizens. As already mentioned before, this CPF is informed and supported by a robust and extensive analytical work prepared in close consultation with many stakeholders here in Egypt and around the world, and under MOIC's leadership. The CPF will aim to operationalize this work. Just to give an example, the country private sector diagnostic identified 4 critical interlinked reform areas to unlock the private sector's full potential to emerge as a competitive force for private sector job creation. These 4 areas are: 1, trade and logistics; 2, competition and the role of the state; 3, commercial justice; and 4, human capital and skills. The CCDR, launched at the COP27 in the presence of His Excellency the Prime Minister, thank you, has laid the basis for operationalization, including, for instance, through NWAFI and bank-supported efforts towards a climate-resilient agri-food transformation, as well as electricity decarbonization. One final piece of knowledge work I want to highlight is the Human Development Public Expenditure Review, which aims to support and inform the government's efforts to enhance socioeconomic outcomes through more and better spending on human capital, including social assistance, pensions, education, and health. So based on these pieces of analytical work, based on our consultations, the CPF has 3 high-level outcomes. And I will go through them extremely briefly in the interest of time. High-level outcome 1 is more and better private sector jobs. Sub-objectives include a level playing field for all enterprises and a strengthened private sector environment that encourages export competitiveness. Greater private sector participation in infrastructure, including renewable energy generation and water and wastewater projects, is an added important objective. High-level objective 2 is enhanced human capital outcomes. This is envisaged through interventions to support the provision of inclusive, equitable, and improved health and education services, as well as effective social protection programs. Equitable service delivery is critical, including in both infrastructure and social services, for both men and women, and in both rural and urban areas across the country. Finally, high-level objective 3 emphasizes the improved resilience to shocks, and this includes interventions to support strengthened macroeconomic management, for instance, by supporting efforts to improve domestic revenue mobilization, but it also covers climate change adaptation and mitigation. This CPF, and I'm coming to the final minute of my intervention, this CPF also intends to support efforts to strengthen Egypt's role in regional integration, including through enhanced regional trade and greater connectivity. Egypt's role in the EMGF, where the bank is an observer, is a good example of a concrete intervention. The CPF has 2 cross-cutting themes, governance and citizen engagement, as well as women's empowerment, which will underlie all interventions. In implementing the above objectives, the CPF will rely extensively on partnerships, including, but not limited to, grant-making donors. The multi-stakeholder country platform led by MOIC will continue to play an active role in the strategic coordination between partners, and very importantly, private capital mobilization will be a key factor in implementing the strategy. Okay, in closing, the launch today, which comes at a difficult time for the world, kickstarts a new phase of development cooperation between Egypt and the World Bank Group on projects, on TA, and on knowledge work, building on our strategic partnership today. We currently have 14 operations amounting to almost $7 billion in the active portfolio, of which 40% are in support of human development and 30% are in support of sustainable development. In recent years and in a world of polycrises, we have supported Egypt to tackle challenges linked to the fallout of COVID and geopolitical developments, including through a fast disbursing $500 million food security operation, which was prepared in record time, as well as a $500 million operation in support of the Takaful and Karama program, which was approved by our Board of Executive Directors in December of last year. We are very proud to continue our strategic partnership with Egypt, and at this very important juncture, we are committed to redouble our efforts to improve the quality of life for all Egyptians. Thank you.
شكرا سيدة مارينا. سوف ننتقل الآن
We are
لفيديو
moving to a
يعطي
video which give a hint about the IFC. Then Sheikh Omar Sila, the Regional Director for North Africa and Horn of Africa in the institution, the element of the private sector in this new partnership.
Your Excellency Prime Minister, Your Excellencies Minister, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege today to represent IFC, which is the private arm of the World Bank. IFC has been established now more than 60 years. We are footprint around 100 countries around the world, 2,000 clients. I don't know if this is working, yes or not. Let me go. Okay, sorry for that. So we have a footprint on 100 countries. I'm very proud to say that Egypt is part of our hub in Africa. We have quite a large team based in Cairo, more than 100 staff, and happy to say that more than 63% of our staff are women. So I'm very proud, to that, and I have a fantastic, colleague. I think we hear all the day that the CPF is an inclusive document done with the government of Egypt and the World Bank, and that the role of the private sector is critical. It's critical, is part of the government of Egypt development plan. And we as an IFC really want to play our role in promoting the Egyptian private sector. We do also want at the same time to engage and continue our collaboration with the government, mainly on the very important program that the government has launched to disinvest some of assets and have the private sector play a more crucial role in the economy of Egypt. And as you say, the way we do it as a IFC, We provide investment, which could be debt or equity. We provide as well a huge part of mobilization. Last year, IFC committed around $33 billion, on which $10 billion was in Africa, but part of it was by leveraging as well our partnership. And this is key when we know that the quantum of investment for the private sector needed in Egypt is very important. We do also have an advisory and an upstream project. The upstream project are really focused on taking a project at a very early stage, bring them at a bankable level. And on the transaction advisory side is where the IFC can advise the government on the key privatization project. These graphs show how the IFC grew over the last 5 years. We reached around $3 billion of commitment. And as you see, this year alone, we are very close to a little above 800 million. And we do hope to cross the bar of 1 billion before the end of June, which will be for us a great year in Egypt, despite all the challenges that we have. And we have a very strong pipeline of projects in all the sectors. I think it's very important. We'll work all across sectors. And it's very, again, when you look at Egypt and all the resources that Egypt has, we are really working and addressing all those sectors. As you can see, we have a sizable portion of it, around 1/3 in the energy sector, on the manufacturing. One thing also which is very important is all that we can do in the sector of the venture capital and on the digital sector. And health here is around 10% of activities, and these are the sector really through the new CPF that we wanted to grow. On the last side, we have a very active advisory portfolio, which is around 40 different projects that we are doing. And again, those advisory projects is to enable the sector to have more private sector engaged. So very diversified, as you can see here. On the CPF, and based on what Marina presented, we have, of course, the same objective. On the first one, which is really related, to job creation, we have, of course, focusing our activities in manufacturing, in agribusiness, look at, sector-oriented, activities. We give a number today, 485 million, which is an active, portfolio, but we do think that there is more that can be done on the sector. Entrepreneurship ecosystem, link again to digital, to fintech, to the investment. We have today 12, investment of IFC in this sector, and we do think that this is a sector where, we can really create, job and include, the youth and the women as well in this sector. Access to finance, SMEs is fundamental. I think is why IFC channel on a global side, more than 45% of our commitment is going, through the banking sector, because it's the only way for us to reach, the SMEs. And the last sector is the PPP. I think the private-public, project, the recent, signing with the government and EBRD and IFC on the DESAL project is one example. But we want also, to expand on all the enabling of competitiveness factors, which are the port and the logistics. On the second area, which is the human capital, very important effort that we are doing on the health sector. As it was mentioned, we did a private sector, diagnostic with a focus on the healthcare. We are working closely with the government, with the World Bank to see how on the healthcare, system we can engage, with the more private sector. And our objective is through the strong engagement to the private sector to reach out, to more than 30 million Egyptians on the healthcare, sector. And we are also on the education and the education sector and looking at early childhood, project that we are considering. Importantly, and linked to a project, which has been promoted by the government and Dr. Anya, is really about the NWAFI, project. The IFC has contributed more than $1.8 billion of investment in the renewable sector, the solar and the wind. We are also quite active with the central bank and the regulator on greening the financial sector. As you know, we issued the first bond of CIB in Egypt, and we would like, to have some green bond, which are going, to follow. One thing which is also key to us is on the resource efficiency. You can add megawatt, it's okay, but as of today, you have some existing, company who are emitting carbon. And one of our key activities is to try to see how we can work, with this company to try to green them. And I'm very happy to see that we have a number now of contracts, signed with companies in Egypt. The last thing, because we know that on the government, policy, the state ownership, program, we would like as an IFC to really support, the government to have a success to this program. How we can do it? Through IFC, footprint, we could really, put all IFC, resources into place and come as an advisor, to the government to have, the state of enterprise being a success. So I would like to reiterate to His Excellency, Mr. Prime Minister, that we are available, we believe in this program, and we think that this will put to another level the private sector. And when I say the private sector, it's not only the international private sector. We do think that we have in Egypt some incredible private sector, and we want to bring all of them, together. But really for us, this is a game changer, and we want to be with you to have this success together. Thank you very much. I know that I forgot something. I forgot to say that my boss has a video, so I want to keep my job, so I let him. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Prime Minister Dr. Mostafa Madbouly, Your Excellency, Minister of International Cooperation, Dr. Rania Al-Mashhad, Your Excellencies, dear Fareed, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, on behalf of IFC, I'm pleased to join you and my World Bank and MEGA colleagues in celebrating the launch of the Country Partnership Framework for Egypt for fiscal years 2023 to 2027, with thanks to all the different stakeholders who took part in the development of this important product. I would like to specifically express IFC's gratitude to the government of Egypt, including the Ministry of International Cooperation, for their leadership and cooperative approach in developing the CPF. I'd also like to commend the seamless coordination between the World Bank Group and the different line ministries and key regulators in Egypt. This coordination helped us to ensure that the CPF accurately builds on current reforms and national priorities and strategies. The result is a product that is a true testament to the excellent collaboration between the government of Egypt and the World Bank Group over many years. I would also like to thank members of the private sector who have been part of the consultations conducted for the purpose of preparing the CPF. Many of you are in the room today. It was critical that the CPF captured the private sector's vision, and this could not have happened without your important inputs, so thank you. Egypt's systematic country diagnostic emphasized the importance of strengthening macroeconomic resilience and economic inclusion, improving the efficiency of public sector spending, and boosting private sector investment and productivity. Similarly, the Egypt Country Private Sector Diagnostic and the Country Climate and Development Report highlighted significant opportunities for private sector-led growth and job creation, and a major role for the country in climate mitigation and adaptation. They also prioritized the importance of ensuring a level playing field for private sector participation to promote competitiveness of Egyptian products. The CPF, which we are celebrating today, builds on these findings and the diagnostic products and clearly underscores the importance of the private sector. The CPF comes at a transformational phase in Egypt's economic path, as the government has announced and implemented several bold reforms to build a more resilient and inclusive economy. From the approval of the state ownership policy, helping level the playing field for private sector participation, to the adoption of a flexible exchange rate regime, which will increase competitiveness of Egyptian products. The government of Egypt has made it clear the private sector has a crucial role to play in Egypt's future. IFC's engagement under the CPF will focus on supporting job-mobilizing sectors, including manufacturing, agribusiness, health, and education, as well as improving the business environment, supporting women-run businesses, boosting trade, growing and greening the Egyptian financial sector, and increasing private sector participation in climate action. This will help set the stage for a modern, inclusive, and export-oriented private sector. The CPF is also an important opportunity for the government of Egypt and the World Bank Group to continue to work together to help build a stronger, more resilient economy. I thank you for your time today and wish you a very successful event.
سننتقل الآن لفيديو قصير يعطي نبذة عن محفظة أعمال الوكالة الدولية لضمان الاستثمار في مصر ميجا. يليه رسالة مسجلة من السيد أثيوبيس كافاز نائب الرئيس ورئيس خبراء إدارة المخاطر والشؤون القانونية والإدارية في الوكالة الدولية لضمان الاستثمار ميجا.
On behalf of MIGA, I'm grateful for the opportunity to co-open this event, marking the beginning of the next chapter in the very important partnership between the government of Egypt and the World Bank Group. Partnership is indeed the key word, as the Egypt Country Partnership Framework 2023 to 2027 has been a truly collaborative effort with committed engagement from the Egyptian authorities and the World Bank Group institutions. With strong support and ownership from the government, the World Bank, IFC, and MIGA have a track record of working closely together to bring about transformational development projects in Egypt, both through public sector as well as private sector channels. The country partnership framework maintains a strong emphasis on this One World Bank Group approach. It incorporates lessons learned from the past as well as findings from several very strong World Bank Group diagnostics on Egypt. During the country partnership framework period, MIGA will continue to work closely with the World Bank and the IFC to contribute to the three high-level outcomes of the country partnership framework: more and better private sector jobs, enhanced human capital outcomes, and improved resilience to shocks. To get there, MIGA will look to support investments into sectors aligned with Egypt's green transition, such as renewable energy, green hydrogen, and projects at the water-food energy nexus, as well as public-private partnerships generally. Our deep understanding of the Egyptian context, aided by our frequent and detailed dialogue with the Egyptian government, will help us support strong project implementation during a period of many global challenges to which Egypt has not been immune. Egypt is a country where MIGA has been able to partner for innovation and where we've successfully executed impactful projects. We currently support 17 active projects in Egypt's energy, infrastructure, and manufacturing sectors for total exposure of nearly $500 million. Alongside IBRD and IFC, we've supported Egypt's renewable energy sector, having guaranteed several solar feed-in tariff projects as well as a wind power project with IFC. Most recently in FY22, MIGA issued almost $100 million in guarantees to facilitate the refinancing of 6 solar projects through a climate-certified bond issuance. The transaction, which also leveraged the participation of EBRD, allowed for the bonds to be rated at investment grade, a precondition for many institutional investors. And as a result, institutional investors helped finance Egypt's renewable energy sector, many of them for the very first time. This is a structure that we're working to replicate both in the renewable energy sector as well as in other sectors of the Egyptian economy. MIGA has also been engaging with foreign commercial banks operating in Egypt with the aim of deploying our capital optimization product, a product aimed at reducing banks' regulatory capital requirements. This would help Egyptian subsidiaries of commercial banks to expand lending to the private sector, to small and medium-sized enterprises, and to projects with climate benefits, all in support of much-needed job creation. We believe there is further potential to accelerate the growth of MSME lending and climate finance, reforms aimed at the financial sector that ensure a level playing field for the development of private banks would help facilitate access to finance and advance financial inclusion. We believe that Egypt's close engagement with the IMF and the recent adoption of the state ownership policy have the potential to enhance the role of the private sector in the economy and unlock significant foreign direct investment, which MIGA stands ready to support. I'm convinced that the government of Egypt's critical ongoing reform efforts will further improve the investment climate and the country's resilience to shocks. We're optimistic about Egypt's potential, and we believe that the country partnership framework provides a strong foundation for how Egypt and MIGA can work together not only for the next 5 years, but for many years to come. MIGA and the World Bank Group are committed to Egypt and to playing an important part in supporting the country's green, resilient, and inclusive development in the coming years. Thank you again for the opportunity to co-open this occasion. The MIGA team looks forward to partnering with Egypt for a prosperous future.
إنه لشرف لنا أن يحضر معالي رئيس الوزراء
That Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli is attending the launch today, the partnership launch today, and invite Dr. Mustafa Madbouli to deliver his speech. By the name of God Almighty, the ministers, Mr. Farid bin Haj, the deputy head of the World Bank for Middle East, allow me to welcome all of you, and I'm honored to start my speech by respecting all the developmental work people who are serious partners, and Egypt is represented as a real model for the development model. including the refugees and the people who are want refuge according to our program, developmental program. I would like to assert that I am reviewing and in touch with the developmental projects. I was keen to attend this partnership agreement between Egypt and the World Bank between 2023-2027 as the newest partnership agreements, which is always transparent and effective and responsible partnerships. I am here valuing the real important role played by the World Bank Group as the other investors to create sustainable development and support the developmental policies adopted by the Egyptian government. As you have heard today with the speakers today, I am looking forward to develop this partnership in a proper way, according to the real need and the Egyptian needs to support the Egyptian economy for a green economy and link the development with the climate change according to the industry and develop the investment in the human beings and develop the rural areas in Egypt which would provide a real core for more interrelation with our partners in the private sector in Egypt and abroad to increase the performance of the Egyptian economy. I was honored to highlight the important role played by the World Bank in what we are adopting in Egypt for the policies in order to strengthen the environment for investment and work and the partnership between Egypt and the World Bank in the coming 5 years to increase the work and job opportunities and in the private sector for better opportunities in order to support the investment of the private sector through different tools and financial tools and providing developmental investment and fees within that framework. The bank also work on the partnership between the private and public sectors to benefit better from the resources of the private sector and develop the infrastructure. The attendees, we are suffering and the world is suffering from many crises and successive crises regionally and which were reflected negatively on the international economy and affected the regional and national economy, which strengthened and led to a longer time for recovery and affected the prices of food and energy. And we thank God that developmental economic policies that were adopted by Egypt in the infrastructure development helped in dealing with these repercussions of the international crises and minimized these repercussions in order to provide safe security for the most affected people. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is supporting us to face these challenges, and we are still with strong steps. The Egyptian state did support and develop its strategies for green economy and minimize the gap for minimize the import of food and supporting the private sector more. And I'm asserting that we are supporting this initiative and this side for creating an investment environment and encourage the investment and work in Egypt. We assert that Egypt worked hard throughout the past years to ensure the resources of the energy for its developmental program, to put our footsteps in the right direction, to have different sources of energy throughout different renewable energy plants, and the nuclear energy and the non-renewable energy, the green nitrogen, which would be launched soon. I would like to thank the unprecedented support by the Egyptian administration for Egyptian women, with all the procedure taken, with all the international institutions which were held, the move of Egyptian government to give her support and reduce violence against women, and the change in the constitution and the increase of the Egyptian women participation in parliament, and the historical decision by the president in appointing women in core position in the judicial system, and move all burdens to increase its the empowerment. Mrs. and Mr. attendees, we are keen as Egyptian government to increase the different partnerships and continuity within the different donors according to the incentives to increase the most benefit to the Egyptian citizen in different sectors with no specialization or any strategy which were adopted by Egypt and its partners in development, according to a strategy which is inclusive and partnership with the private sector and the NGOs, and the speeches which we have listened to showed the partnerships between Egypt and the World Bank Group between 2023 to 2027, which is transparent and effective, with the participation of all partners within a strategic partnership and framework which give a priority to the national needs, for which is the the sustainable development in Egypt 2030 and the national program for the strategic program. The strategy seeks to develop Egypt in creating lanes for a better standard of living for the most needy brackets, and renewable and green energy according to the challenges that we are facing. With no doubt, the challenges is hindering the success of these developmental paths. We are seeking the help of our partners in order to return back to our recovery. The Egyptian state hope and look forward to see a real development with our partnership with the World Bank regionally as well, and we need our expertise to be used in the partnership as well, according to the strategies of developmental partnership between Egypt and our partners. I'm sure that Egypt is always a center for this help. We are always a core partner for this help and partnership, for boosting the cooperation, like the platform for the partnership between the agriculture and industry and fighting desertification and boosting the illegal immigration and human trafficking. Egypt announced its readiness to provide all the help needed in order to reach our goals with our partners, to maximize the benefits to all the institutions. Before ending my speech, I would like to talk about a very important topic, which was a headline, which is the importance of the donors' role in light of the current challenges that the world is facing. Indeed, the developing countries are the most affected, especially the low-income brackets are facing great challenges to find the provided needs. We have to shape a roadmap to develop the World Bank Group in a fair and reasonable way in order to solve the crises due to the challenges and provide a new way of financing in order to ease the burden on the developing countries, as the resources are quite limited in light and comparison to the challenges. Within that framework, Egypt is supporting the work of the donors within the 3 points according to Sharm el-Sheikh plan, which was launched in last November, to increase the donation for the developing countries and adopt new techniques which comes in parallel with the circumstances of the new funds given to the developing countries. I would like to use this opportunity to thank and congratulate the coming president of the World Bank, Mr. Agai. I would like to thank the World Bank Group and Minister of International Cooperation and the team of the ministry for their efforts in all the stages for preparing this partnership. I would like to thank all ministers and ministries who contributed in these meetings and negotiations, and the NGOs and civil society organizations who had a very important and strategic role. And there is no doubt that the partnership frame between Egypt and the World Bank Group within the coming 5 years come in cooperation and in parallel with our needs and our aim to increase the vision and the priorities, the national priorities, to benefit from these strategies and deepen the mutual responsibilities between all the concerned bodies for reaching sustainable and conclusive development. Thank you so much.
شكرا لكم معالي رئيس الوزراء على كلماتكم المتميزة وتشريفكم لنا اليوم، وشكرا للحضور الكريم لتلبية
for coming for the launch of the partnership strategy in Egypt 2023-2027. Thank you so much.